All right, everybody. It looks like it's 2 p.m., so we can go ahead and get started. And just let me know if you guys have trouble hearing me. It looks like we have our Lexie captions in action. So thanks, everybody, so much for joining us for our new product showcase. And today we're going to go through a lot of the stuff that we would typically go through in ordinary times at NAB. So, just a little bit of background today for those of you who may not be too familiar with EEG. We've been a company for nearly 40 years now. We were actually founded as Electrical Engineering Group, the early 1980s, and we helped develop the North American 608 closed caption standard in conjunction with PBS. So it's definitely, closed captioning has been part of our DNA for quite some time, and we're really happy to be still providing accessibility solutions in 2020 as they become more and more important. So here I'm going to take us through, our kind of our flagship product right now for SDI closed caption encoding is our HD492 ICAP encoder. It's a dual input output encoder, so it has 2 SDI inputs and 2 SDI outputs, as well as a decode output for displaying open captions. It can be really useful, those 2 input outputs, if you're doing multi-language captioning. So you can use something like our ICAP Translate product in that second output to translate captions, from your first language, from English to another language, like Spanish, for example. And this encoder is fully compatible with, ICAP captioners, as well as Lexie and all our caption partners. The ICAP encoder, it features a number of add-on modules as well. You can use, there's a module for CC match where you can delay the video. We have options for SCUDY 104 insertion, closed caption, playback, CC delay matching, as I mentioned with our CC match modules. You can actually use this encoder to delay video by up to 10 seconds. And kind of the big news, the big product update for the 492 is the 4K version that we'll be releasing this fall that will be compatible with 12G SDI, 4K video. Also has a 211040 module, which is pretty big news in that it's future-proofed for IP video workflows. So you can actually inject bank data into a parallel 2110 workflow, which can be useful, if you're building out a workflow in SDI, but you want to be future-proofed, for that eventual move to 2110. And speaking of 2110, that leads us to our UltraAlta software caption encoder, which is a closed caption encoder for IP video environments. Again, this is, as the slide says, this is primarily a broadcast product for cable networks, OTT networks, and this is just our virtualized encoder to work with MPEG transport stream and 2110. We've got quite a few of these out in the wild as it is, and we're starting to see a lot more interest in 2110 as that move's starting to occur. So very exciting, to see that technology become more commonplace, and with it, Alta. Alta supports a number of formats, including HEVC, DVB subtitles, 21 SMPTE 2038 Aspen. Also supports SCUDY 35 trigger insertion as well. So, just really the advanced form of our HD492 for the next generation video format. We also have, focusing a little bit more on the 2110 as opposed to the transport stream. We have the Alta network gateway, which is a 1RU live closed caption system that can accommodate up to 10 channels of SMPTE 211030 audio and 211040 ancillary data simultaneously. Also supports NMOS management API. So definitely happy to answer any questions you guys might have about Alta, either for MPEG transport stream or 2110. Bill McLaughlin, our VP of product here at EEG, is also present on the webinar. He works extremely closely with Alta, So he's another great resource for any questions you may have about your move to 2110 or MPEG transport stream. Moving on, here's our Falken live streaming RTMP closed caption encoder, which is really one of EEG's coolest products, and also something that we've seen, you know, kind of as we've moved into this new state of normality. You know, we've seen a lot of interest in this, and it's really exciting because it really enables accessibility for all sorts of virtual events without the addition of any hardware. You know, as you can imagine, there's so many things that, you know, used to be in person, such as this, you know, such as this very webinar, you know, are moving to a virtual world. You know, there are going to be new accessibility needs, and kind of one of the challenges I've heard a lot in my day-to-day interaction with people looking for captions is not being able to make it into an office or, you know, into a facility to use equipment. So Falken really can be useful in that regard too, in that it's a fully virtual product. It's an RTMP input output closed caption encoder. We're seeing it used for, you know, a lot of universities, really any streaming event. And how it works is you just take the output from your streaming media encoder, you point that to Falken using an ICAP connection. Falken either sends the audio to a closed caption writer, a CART transcriptionist, or to the Lexie service. The caption data is returned to Falken in the cloud, and you have an RTMP output that you can point to multiple CDNs using one channel of Falken. It's very scalable as well. You know, it's available as an annual license as well as a monthly license. So if you have multiple video streams you might be working with, you can spin those up. You can spin those up using additional Falken licenses as necessary without being locked in for a whole year. So it can really scale with you as your captioning needs scale. We have an HLS output expansion scheduled for 2020 Q3, you know, right around IBC time. Also have a direct HLS output with BTT or TTML caption tracks. And we're working on improving support for non-European language character sets. So, you know, think your Cantonese, your Mandarin, your Korean, languages like that, which previously we'd only supported Latin character sets with Falken. So that's some very exciting news there as well. Now, moving on, Falken, as we've been talking quite a bit about, Lexie is our automatic captioning service that leverages speech recognition technology to provide automatic captioning. You know, this technology, it's really exciting in that it's enabled a lot of people to provide closed captions in situations where it may not have been practical to, or, you know, might not have been affordable to do so. You know, right now we state the accuracy of our Lexie service at about 90%, which is out of the box, and we offer, you know, what we call topic models to improve that and to program Lexie with specific vernacular and vocabulary that might be relevant to the content that you're captioning. And with those custom topic models in place, you know, we've seen accuracy well upwards of 95%. You know, we really think of Lexie at EEG as being an excellent supplement to live closed captioners. It's really great because, you know, unlike when you work with a human being where you have to schedule this person in advance, with Lexie, you just have to, you know, you just have to activate it through the user interface, and you're all set to caption. So it works great in situations for, like, you know, breaking news, for example, where there may be very short notice when you might need a captioner, or, you know, just for captioning streams that you might not otherwise be able to afford to do so. You know, specifically in the case of higher education for right now, you know, you may want captions for every class that's gone online, but it may not make sense to retain a live captioner, you know, for captioning into an entire semester worth of courses. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of really great applications for the Lexie service. And we're really excited about watching this technology as it continues to develop and as it continues to, work to provide accessibility alongside live captioners. Some developments with Lexie are, we've released additional ASR models for higher accuracy, lower latency. We have some preset models that we offer with the service for news, other events, and we're continuing to broaden those. We've also, a really big development since the last NAB is Lexie Local, which is one RU unit similar in form to our closed caption encoders that we term Lexie Local, that provides automatic captioning without cloud connectivity. This was specifically designed kind of for the three-letter folks in Washington and other corporate applications, content that isn't really designed for the public, where there may be a no cloud policy just because it's extremely sensitive, like a corporate app, like the minutes of like a corporate board meeting, or maybe a new product release, something like that. But the license model can be very favorable to broadcasters who are producing a significant amount of live closed caption content, because it's really an unlimited license. In that we don't track usage, and it's not billed by the hour or by the minute, but the Lexie Local price point, it's an annual fee that includes unlimited closed captioning. So with that, there is no metered usage. So if you're in a situation where you're captioning 24/7, or there's a significant amount of usage, Lexie Local and the license model might be beneficial to you from a cost perspective. So if you think that might be the case, I invite you to discuss that with me or another member of our sales team. We can definitely kind of tell you at what point it might make sense to use Lexie Local from a cost perspective over something like the cloud-based version. And here's a nice graphic that we've generated here, illustrating the differences between Lexie Local and Lexie. And you see really the primary differences is with the ordinary cloud Lexie, you can integrate that with human captioning, and that they can exist side by side. You can detect the presence of human captioners, where of course that wouldn't be possible with Lexie Local, since you're going to be in a lockdown environment without connectivity to human captioners with an internet connection. It's also not virtual, and it does have that fixed annual cost. And Regina says there's a question: does Lexie Local include an integrated closed caption encoder? And no, it does not. But again, that's something that we can kind of discuss how that works if you want to contact sales@eegent.com. Definitely can kind of talk about the options for using a closed caption encoder, with Lexie Local, and how that will impact the overall cost of that device. The AV610 Caption Port. Again, this is a product that we've seen, a lot of increased interest in with this, new normal, so to speak. It's fully compatible with ICAP. It uses an ICAP connection, and it's also compatible with Lexie. As the slide mentions, you can also configure it for use over RS-232 Telnet, and it can be configured to include an optional modem. What the AV610 does is it's not a caption encoder, in that it displays open captions only. And as you can see on this graphic, you can scale the video so that if you're giving a presentation, much as I am today, you can scale it. So, on the presentation today, you see these captions at the bottom of the screen, but, and fortunately, we have a very good marketing person who's put together excellent slides, so nothing's obstructed by these captions. But oftentimes presentations, there's a lot to view. You have, slides with like infographics, histograms, that sort of thing, where captions might obstruct those. with the caption port, you can scale the video so nothing's obstructed by the closed captions. And again, you know, it can be very good in like in a venue setting where you have you know, a display at the front of the room, and you don't want people in the back to miss something that's in the presentation because of the captions. So it's definitely you know, extremely useful in education, corporate settings, as well as in venue events when those ultimately return. So that's a very exciting product. There's going to be a 4K version shipping this summer in 2020 that can overlay captions in native resolution for 4K video with a 12G SDI connection. And again, as I said, it's designed for large screen live events. Oh, wow. And it looks like at this point, we've almost covered everything. Went a little bit quicker than I expected. I didn't mean to run through this so quickly for everybody, but definitely interested in hearing any questions that you guys have. So, you know, definitely want to have this be conversational. Can the AV610 do a full page of captioning? We have something with a separate screen for open captioning. Bill, do you know the answer to that? I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, basically the question revolves around the video generation feature, and we are in the latest release, there's some new features surrounding this, so it's great to mention. You actually do not have to put an input video into the product at all. You can upload through the web page a static image in a bunch of different formats, either a JPEG or an SVG vector graphic, and you can actually display that along with the scrolling text in kind of an extra large font that goes to about half screen worth of large text, and the other part is occupied by the static image. So it's kind of perfect for that type of situation where you have an event where you don't have a separate magnification video that you're trying to put on the TV. You're just trying to use the display to show captions kind of in as readable a way as possible.
Excellent, excellent. And question 3, can Alta encoding support local closed caption encoding, say from a teleprompter feed?
Yes, there's a telnet input. Each channel that you set up on the Alta server will have a separate port for plain telnet input from a local device like a prompter, and yeah, that works the same way it would with an SDI caption encoder.
Can Lexie Local feed multiple closed caption encoders at the same time? Not simultaneously, no. It's one-to-one simultaneously if you're running simultaneous. You can't caption multiple video feeds at once with Lexie Local, but Bill can kind of elaborate on how that works in terms of supporting multiple closed caption encoders at once.
You can connect multiple encoders, and actually you can license multiple simultaneous streams on a single physical Lexie Local server. So the question from the point of view of installation is yes. From the point of view of licensing, each one requires a separate license.
Question 5, are there any plans or consider to make a portable non-rack unit of the 492? We do offer the HD 1492, which is an open gear card for the 492, but I don't imagine that that's the question that's being asked. You're asking, is there kind of like a portable 492 that you can take around? I'm not aware of any plans to develop that, although we do occasionally get that same question. Bill, do we have any plans to kind of make a more portable version of the 492 at this point?
Nothing that's really being released at this time, no.
It's one of those things that we get really kind of occasional questions about, but it's never been something that we've gotten a huge interest in. So it's something that's, you know, we're keeping an eye on, and it's still under discussion. But unfortunately, I don't think we have any concrete plans to productize, you know, kind of a portable HD 492 at this time. can Falken be used with platforms like Twitch and OBS for captioning?
I mean, yes, that's exactly what it does. I mean, OBS would be a popular open source streaming encoder, and basically from OBS you can put out an RTMP feed to Falken. You put that to Falken, and then from Falken you can send to Twitch is one of the many destination platforms that can support the embedded captions that Falken will put on the RTMP stream.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think of Falken, and Bill, please correct me if I'm wrong, is anything that accepts an RTMP stream can work with Falken, so long as the web player has a caption decoder, which of course, if it has a CC button, it will work with Falken, provided that the CDN accepts an RTMP stream. And Bill, do you have anything to add there? Or?
No, I mean, absolutely, as you said. I mean, anything that supports RTMP embedded captions, we're good to go. I mean, certainly Twitch is a popular one, and that's been proven many times.
You say Lexie is 90 to 95% accurate. How do you measure accuracy using any particular model? For example, NER. How does Lexie handle traditionally unsuitable video content, crosstalk, significant background noise, music, etc.? How to measure accuracy in speech recognition? That's kind of a tricky question. Is what time frame are you looking at? And Bill, when we came to 90%, what time frame were we looking at for Lexie?
Yeah, that's the quoted numbers are more of, I'm familiar with the NER methodology, which is a methodology where you will judge the accuracy of a transcript based not only on how many words are substituted, but also based on, essentially not every word is counted the same. You receive, the score kind of purports to be out of 100, but it's not really a percentage, if that makes sense. It's really a score out of 100, and the score, it penalizes errors more when those errors damage the meaning of a sentence or phrase a lot, and punishes errors less when the errors are kind of minimal and don't damage the meaning of the phrase that much. And that might sound very subjective, but there's a relatively well-formed scoring system around this that's more objective than it would sound at first blush. And some countries, not the United States, but for example, Canada and the UK, have adopted standards for live broadcasting that reference NER in what they ask broadcasters to do. We found as a rule of thumb that, we generally quote in a more simple word error rate. We've generally found that NER scores for most Lexie transcripts are a little bit higher than straight word error rate scores, since many of the errors are ones that NER would judge to be sort of less severe than average. But the numbers look similar, but as I said, are not directly comparable. But so typically we'll do something like take a 5 or 10 minute sample of a given content and compute the simpler word error rate score, since that's just something that is easier for more people to do quickly, and I think gives you the right impression of where you're going for most types of content. And read the second part of that question. Clearly your Lexie accuracy is going to vary a lot from, generally you could receive 95% or higher accuracy when you have a presentation where, a polished speaker who's easy to understand, who speaks at a measured pace, perhaps, a news anchor reading a teleprompter, talks about, sort of very well-known subjects that are not full of jargon words, and, it's certainly possible to use Lexie on a much broader range of content than that. But if you consider what the simplest case is, essentially everything you add on top of that is maybe a small added degree of difficulty that is going to impact the results a bit. And we do a lot of research and work with a lot of partners on trying to improve all of these issues with crosstalk and multiple speakers, issues with background noise and music. These are all active areas, but it's an added degree of difficulty, and that's typically why it's simply not possible to cite a single number in any measurement system that that Lexie or any other product is going to meet for every single piece of content. So it's always an active situation, I think, with a customer that has a particular kind of content, building up the vocabulary topic models and building up the confidence that, it's suitable for a specific form of content or what can be done if the initial results are less than hoped. It's different content has different results for sure. I mean, that's not a, that's a problem that's managed rather than solved, let's say.
Yeah, and I would just go on to say that, I would say we manage it very well with the custom topic models, in the sense that we really empower users to make it, almost as good as they like, in a lot of senses, and that, I think there is, to some extent, really a direct correlation, or not to some extent, there is a direct correlation to, how much time you put into the custom topic models and the results you get.
Well, the topic models are very good for proper nouns.
Yeah.
They're very good for jargony phrases about a specific subject. If the problem you're fighting is is something more like crosstalk or loud background sounds, the impact just, that's kind of a different problem, and that often needs to be addressed by trying to figure out whether it's possible to get a cleaner and more isolated dialogue mic. That can be a different problems than noun recognition problem.
Sure, absolutely. And those are problems that, a live captioner would have. Those are issues a live captioner would also have difficulty with the difference
For
being.
sure. I mean, as humans, we have a tremendous ability to kind of ignore what doesn't suit us to hear in a moment. But yes, it certainly is a degree of difficulty factor for human captioners as well.
Okay. And I think we kind of covered this, but there's two more questions here. What is the success versus error rate? For example, in our video production classes, we have a diverse student body with various accents. Can the encoder discern such?
Yeah, and the Lexie system, we work with several different models that are trained on a pretty wide variety of accents, including really global models that are designed around the idea that many business English speakers are not English as a first language speakers. But accents is one more thing when we talk about a degree of difficulty that, if someone, a good rule of thumb would be to ask, as a listener, do I perceive that the person I'm listening to has a strong accent? Do I ever have trouble understanding them? And, that is often a good lens into whether the automatic captioning is also likely to have problems.
Sure. And what is the success? How much delay does Falken add?
The usual answer is about 1 second. The technical details on that would be that it really has a lot to do with your keyframe interval on the live RTMP that you are uplinking. A typical value will be something like, 2 keyframes or 1 keyframe per second, in which case your delay through Falken is going to be about 1 second. The delay is going to be a minimum of that keyframe interval. So for that reason, we typically will recommend that, when using Falken, you're conscious of the video keyframe interval. And that's true of a lot of live streaming that is not Falken as well, but Falken is one more thing in the chain, so it's one more reason to think about trying to allocate enough bandwidth to have pretty regular keyframes.
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much, everybody, for attending EEG's new product showcase today here. It's great to see you all virtually, for you to join us for this 30 minutes. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day. Happy captioning.